Mongol invasion, how the Muslims were. And briefly, we said there were 3 areas to focus on, roughly, in the Muslim world where the events will happen. We said the area of Egypt and Sham. This was the area where Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi had dominated, created a very strong state, the Ayyubi state, right? Where people are united, succeeded in defeating the Franks, right? But the problem was his descendants, his children, his grandchildren were not like him. What he predicted happened. They started fighting with one another. So if you look in the time of the Mongol invasion, you will see that Egypt and Sham, again, they're divided with different, all Ayyubiyin, all the children and the family of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. But now they're divided, each one is ruling a place, and they're starting to fight with one another. So that was roughly the state of Egypt and Sham, and we'll see more today about this, which will be very interesting, inshallah. Then we said in the center you have the Khilafah, the Abbasi Khalifa, which is still in Baghdad, but he is almost a symbol, very weak, nothing but a symbol for the Muslims, and kind of isolated, although everybody affiliates with him, but he has no real power, right? And we said the strongest of the nations of the time was Ad-Dawla al-Khawarizmiyya, Khawarizm Shah, we discussed this last time, right? Which is all the area of Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, all Central Asia, right? Like Samarkand and Bukhara. This was ruled by a very powerful man, Muhammad ibn Khawarizm. And that's where the Mongols started. That's where the friction started happening. And last time we saw how in 1 year, the Mongols almost swept over and destroyed most of the Muslim cities in this region. Last time we ended where now a situation happened that the Khawarizms are no longer there. The entire region is occupied by the Mongols. We discussed who they are, remember some of their habits, some of their techniques, and the most important part I would emphasize again and again, their use of psychological warfare. The most serious thing about the Mongols is not their numbers and their dedication, is they knew how to defeat their opponent internally. And that's what was a very big weapon they used again and again and again against the Muslims specifically, right? And we'll see more of that again as we move forward, inshallah. So last time we ended up with a situation where the Mongols, right, took all of Central Asia from the Muslims. They stopped near Baghdad because although Baghdad is weak, there was still some reverence of the Muslim Khilafah. They considered Baghdad was the biggest city in the world at the time, literally. 3 million people, biggest libraries, 500 years. Its reputation is so high. So even the Mongols, they decided to make a pause before they even attempt to go further, right? It's the reverence of the Muslim Khalifa at the time that caused this to happen. Right. So briefly, again, just one thing. In the years to come, right, the Mongols decided to stop the expansion in the Muslim world, and they started expanding in the Christian world. So now the Christians started to face the Mongol invasion. And the areas they decided to go, Russia, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia. You know Russia? Remember Hitler, Bonaparte, right? Every time they try to take Russia, it's too difficult. The Mongols succeeded in taking the whole Russia, including Moscow. Everything fell to them. They even went to Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia. They expanded so much in Europe, causing a lot of damage to the Christians. I'm not going to go through the campaigns there. But the interesting part, while they were doing this took them maybe 10 years. It gave the Muslims a break. Meaning what? It's almost like Allah's like, okay, they stopped. You have a chance to do something. And you would think that the Muslims would be alerted enough that they're coming our way and they would do something. Nevertheless, as we will see today, unfortunately, this was not the case, right? In today's session, I'm going to start with something. How did the Muslims live under the Mongols? The Mongols took this region, decades now passed, and the Muslims are living in Bukhara and Samarkand under the Mongol rule. How was it? How do you think it was? Those are the most barbaric people. Remember, they killed, by the way, this region where Samarkand and Bukhara is, it was about 3 million people. In 1 year, the Mongol decimated the population to 300,000. So 90% dead. That's how they were just very barbaric, right? So they are, in a way, some people say savages. Now you have to live under them. How do you think that was? living under the Mongols. How was it for the Muslims? What did they do, right? Interestingly enough, the Mongols introduced an idea that I think is a very interesting idea. It has to do with something we deal with today. And the scholars of the time had to actually rebuttal this idea, which was what? The Mongols did something really, for most of us, would be out of the ordinary. They said, no, you know what? We propose religious tolerance. Religious tolerance, we can all coexist together. We do not care what religion you, as long as you live under the Mongols and you accept our rule, you can go to the masjid, you can go to the church, you can go to the Buddhist temple. You are free to worship whomever you want. Very, very nice, right? Now, what's the problem with that? They introduced an idea for the Muslims that was at the time new. They said, yeah, I don't know if you see what's going on. They're saying, you can what? Worship whomever you want. What does worship mean here? In the masjid. What about outside the masjid? No. So the Quran is to be used for what? You recite it in your prayers. You recite it in your home. But is it a book of legislation? No. What legislation will you follow? Genghis Khan's Yasa. Our own rules. You get the idea? This is not a new idea. This is something we're familiar with, right? So basically, why was that a problem for Muslims? Before that, if you remember, Muslims did not have this system. For a Muslim living, especially in all the eras before, we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ubudiyya for us means what? When we say we worship Allah, it means two things. Rituals, my salah, right? But also my obedience, my submission. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only in the matters of the hereafter, even worldly affairs, in finances, in divorce, in penal codes, right? So the idea of we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a holistic way. This is our definition of the religion. Religion is not the set of rituals we do. Religion is a way of life. My way of life is submission in everything, right? So that was the Muslim idea. Even with the ruler, we obey the ruler. We don't worship him. We obey him as long as he is obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was the point, right? Now, they introduced a system, they almost like saying the following, no, let's update that, right? See, it's not one ilah anymore. Let's split it, right? So, your rituals, you use the Quran, Allah is your creator, your sustainer, ritualistic worship, issues of the afterlife, the barzakh, of course, the angels, great. But when it comes to worldly issues, when it comes to the rules by which you live, that is not the Quran, that's the Yasa. And you have to obey the Khan. I don't know if you see what's going on, right? So now the Muslims are introduced to something that we're familiar with nowadays, the concept of church and state, secularism. You see that this is a secular system introduced by the Mongols, right? And of course, everybody's happy as long as everybody has to follow the Yasa. So I'll give you an example. As a Muslim, we slaughter under the Yasa rules. If you slaughter an animal, you will be slaughtered. You're not allowed because they consider that barbaric. They're not going to let you do that, right? That's their opinion. So, okay, so what should you do? You know, they're very kind and, right? You would think they will say don't kill animals, for example. But remember what we said about the Mongols, they ate everything, including lice and, remember? Right? So they would say, no, if you want to kill an animal, here is their method. You tie the animal, right? You open the chest, get out the heart of the animal. That's more merciful in their view. So as a Muslim, you have to follow that rule. You see the idea? So now there is a system that the Muslims started to be introduced to. Hey, we can live this way. I can worship Allah in the masjid as long as I mind my own business and I let them impose the rules. Life goes on. That idea, scholars had to struggle with. Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir, if you look to, they will be very strong on what? Al-Hakimiyya, in al-hukmu illa lillah. You know, this idea that even some of us struggle with today, right? This idea goes further, that some of us actually, when you look carefully, sometimes it's the same idea. Some of us, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Meaning what? The modern version is, I worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is my rituals. But when it comes to what I should do in my life, I will decide. We will decide. Right? It's not the Quran anymore. It's democracy. Democracy is not bad, but when it's enveloped by the Quran. But when it's used on top of religion, so we decide we don't like this, we like this. If we collectively decide something, hey, LGBT is okay. You can, so what? It becomes a rule. For example, right? So that idea of secularism was first, like the Muslims encountered it in this time, which will cause the scholars of later times, they had to address this, right? So this is one interesting point that I just thought to mention before we go on. Type. Now the Mongols decided to have a pause, right? And focus on themselves and expansion in Europe. Meanwhile, when this was happening, something else was happening, not in the region of Central Asia and Iraq, rather in Jerusalem, right? We will see Europe, the Franks, there is another crusade heading towards the Muslims, right? So this is what we want to speak about. What was happening while this was happening in Central Asia, and what was going on in Egypt and Syria, and what were the Muslims doing at the time, right? So those years, the descendants of Salah ad-Din, as we said, they continued to struggle. The Ayyubid, the descendants of Salah ad-Din, are fighting one another, right? And to keep it simple, it ended up with the following. You had Egypt under the rule of one of the descendants of Salah ad-Din, it's an important man, Najm ad-Din Ayyub. As-Salih Najm ad-Din Ayyub. And it is said after Salah ad-Din, he was one of the best rulers among the Ayyubiyin. We'll see why. But the two names, you have now Egypt under Najm ad-Din, and you have Sham, the strongest ruler there, is his own uncle, As-Salih Ismail. We don't have to remember the name, right? But I want you to remember there is two big entities, right? And there are many others, but two big ones, right? And now Salih Ismail, the uncle, so that, Egypt belongs to me. He should not be ruling it, and a kind of war is going to start happening between both parties. So now the children of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi are starting to fight. And I'm speaking fight in the battlefield. The interesting part that happened, and again, before I go into the line of events, there were two important things that were happening in terms of society. One, the scholars and the schools that Salah ad-Din initiated were very alive at the time. Despite the rulers fighting, the scholars of the time were very prominent, very active, and had a good impact on people. Among those, I'm going to focus on two today because we'll see them. Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam and Abu al-Hasan al-Shadli, which we'll speak along a little bit more about while we go further, right? The other thing, this will cause a whole shift. It started small, but it will result in a complete transformation. One of the things that Salah ad-Din started now was getting to be done on a bigger scale. What is it? In the time of Nur ad-Din Zinki and Salah ad-Din, they did something really interesting. Salah ad-Din would go buy some young slaves. From where? From the Christian lands. So those are what? People in the slave markets in the Christian land. So they're not even Muslims, they don't speak Arabic, right? So he would say, let's go buy some of their kids. What are you going to do with them? Look at how he thought. I'll bring them over, and he's not going to treat them as a slave. He brought them over and he started teach them Arabic. First, let them speak Arabic, teach them the Quran, introduce them to scholars and fiqh and adab, and he started treating them as if they're his own children. Best food, best treatment, best accommodation, right? Show them kindness, and let's educate them well. He started teaching them science, math, philosophy, logic, strategy, sciences, art, and literacy. He taught all those three. Then, when they grow up a little bit, they're like now 11 and 12, he says, okay, now, martial arts, swords, spears, archery, horseback riding, professional warriors, right? So they were initiated in the arts of war. But first, he placed in them the glorification of Islam. Who's Allah, who's Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the rules of fiqh, Quran, speaking Arabic, reverence for the scholars, right? Then after that, they were now trained in all sort of combat, right? And the training was so rigorous, we have manuals of it. And if you want, but I'll just mention some things, right? So for example, the manual says the bow and arrow, right? So they will start, with a small bow, but at the end, to graduate, you know how many? First of all, when they're firing the bow and arrow, they hold 5 arrows in one hand while they're firing. I don't know how. So there is no time to do this. So you have the arrows in the hand, right? Now, the rate of fire, 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds. Just think about what I'm saying. 1 second, that's 2 arrows. So can you imagine? It's like a machine gun. Literally, right? And then you have to shoot about 100 yards. You have to hit 1 yard while galloping on the horse. The training was extremely rigorous. Now the Mamluks were trained to fight with all sorts of weapons. Everything. Archery, sword and a dagger, double sword, long sword. They had a very deadly weapon that was especially for the Franks. And can anybody guess what that would be? The Franks, they wear iron stuff all over. Spear, definitely, they were very good with spears and lances and javelins. Yep. This is the most dangerous weapon. A mace. Right? In close combat, see, like, if you hold it, you'll see why I'm saying this. It's iron, it's very heavy. Even if you wear a helmet, one hit from this can cause a concussion. Right? You get the idea? Even if you're wearing this, I'll break your ribs. So this is, and then they were very good in what? Close combat. Because when it came to the Franks, the Muslims were lacking in armor in the beginning. So close combat, in the beginning, Muslims were like, the Franks will outperform them because of the heavy armor and the heavy sword, right? So now the Mamluks are trained, no, you have armor and you have weapons that if you encounter heavy armor, you can take them out, right? So that was something that was now being developed. And this system that Salah ad-Din built, he used to have a few of them. Now, Salih Najm ad-Din of Egypt started to do what? Started to get more and more. And he did something, and I've just mentioned that. He used to have a palace in a place by the Nile River. If anybody is from Egypt. Al-Rawda, right? Al-Rawda, right? So, it's like almost an island in the Nile, right? That's where his palace was, right? On the Nile, very beautifully. He built a house for the Mamalik. He would go eat with them every day. Imagine the Sultan of Egypt is sitting to eat with his Mamalik. They have a special cook for the best type of food, right? He built for them a place just to live by him in this, and that's why they were called Al-Mamalik Al-Bahariya, the Mamluks of the sea. Sea is like almost the Mamluks of the river. And it wasn't because they're navy or something, it was because they lived by the Nile, by the Sultan. One thing to know about the Mamalik now, the Mamalik raised this way, how do you think they viewed the Sultan? It was not a master-slave relationship. You get it? This is a man that took us, look what he, and by the way, at the end, Salah ad-Din used to do what? When they graduate, he frees them. So when you master everything and you have the graduation ceremony and with even the sword, right? One of the tests that they will give them, you have to control how you'll strike with the sword, right? So they would put like some, sugar cane, right? Like, or some rods or like paper, and then after it, a pillow. And you have to hit cutting the sugar cane and you stop before the pillow. Do you get the idea? It's like I want you to control how far your hit is, right? And then sometimes they'll tell him you have to learn how to hold the sword with 3 fingers only. Which is like, I was like, how on earth? It's like, it's very rigorous, right? But if you graduate, you're free. And not only you're free, Salah ad-Din will give you estates, position in the army, you're a commander, and now so the Mamluks loved their ustad. That's not their slave master. They viewed him as what? My family. And a strong bond was created between them. Almost it's like a cohort, right? And you graduate together, and they have like, it's a family structure, and there is a sense of brotherhood. So they became very loyal to their, not master, their ustad. So the Mamalik of Salih Najm ad-Din, they were very loyal to him. They loved him, right? Now, there was one problem with the Mamalik. When you look to their history, they look like they're knowledgeable, they're powerful, but there was one trait that you see in them that was kind of off. They're very harsh. Very harsh. Even against the opponents, they're not. Salah ad-Din had compassion. The Mamluks, if they capture Franks, it's like, forget it. They're out, right? They, as people, were very harsh in the way they dealt with each other. The way there was a sense of harshness, extreme rationale and logic, being very powerful, very strategic, right? Very tough and rough. What? Why? Because there was one thing that I personally, this is my personal opinion, not from books. The way they were brought up is almost really nice. Scholars, Quran, Sunnah, right? Manhood, chivalry, art of war, horseback riding, strategy, tactics, politics, philosophy. What is missing? There is no female element at all. Zero feminine qualities and traits. And that's a problem. That's not a balance. That's not a balanced way of life. The Prophet ﷺ, were there women affecting him? Absolutely. Right? It's not only men. When men only raise children with all male traits, they end up missing on what? Compassion, empathy, kindness, right? And that, I think, was one big problem. The Mamluks lived in almost a boys' school, in boarding school. They used to go to, sometimes they would tell them, you're not leaving for 10 years, right? Until you finish. It's very tough. So that led to what? There is a sense of harshness in them, in general, right? That, as you will see, was actually one of the negative traits of the Mamalik later on. But other than that, very powerful people. Now, I'm saying this because you'll see the impact of this on the Ummah, inshallah. Now, another thing, as I said, now we're in the year 640 Hijri, again about 1240, roughly, right, in Christian time. The scholars of the time, right here, the two that I want to focus on, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam and Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhi. And I will give you a little bit of who they are and what they did, just a little bit. But Damascus and Egypt, right? And later Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam will go to Egypt. So those two we're going to focus a little bit on today, inshallah. Type. Back to the line of events. Now what is happening, right? So we said Egypt is under Najm al-Din, Salih Najm al-Din Ayyub, and the Salih Ismail is in Damascus. And the Salih Ismail decides to do something really out of the book now. He wants so badly to invade Egypt. But Egypt is a powerful country. Egypt is a big country. And we have a lot of Mamalik in Egypt, and those are powerful soldiers. And he realizes his army alone is not enough. So he needs a bigger army. And he needs the heavy cavalry, if you will, to encounter those Mamalik. When he did something completely surprising at that time, he actually went and made a deal with the Franks. Right? And what was the deal? See, this is again a very negative. It's one thing to fight with your brother, right? And it's another to bring a gangster to help kill your brother. So he said, if you join me in getting Egypt, I am going to give you, at the time, Jerusalem and many of the cities that Salah ad-Din took out from you. And he started by handing them off the cities first. Here, take them, before we do anything. And then furthermore, you need better weapons. Damascus is known for the swords. The Damascus swords are very well famous for that. Your soldiers can go to Damascus to buy weapons. We will give you weapons that will help us and help you encounter Egypt. Now, can you just think about this? Now, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam was the scholar of the time in Damascus, heard this news. Now, this is a great scholar. They call him Sultan al-Ulama, and I will show you his reverence and his state, right? He heard this. What do you think? He went on the pulpit and he started clearly telling people, it is absolutely haram for anybody to deal with the Franks. You cannot buy and sell, you cannot sell weapons to them, and let alone that we are making an alliance with them against our Muslim brothers. This is not acceptable. Let alone we're giving them cities. And he started making dua, Ya Rabbi, provide for the Muslims a proper leader to lead them. Replace the leader with a better one. And of course, what happened? What do you think the leader did at the time? Will he leave him? No, right? So he captured Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, right? And he told him, slow it down, just mind your own business. And just do the tahara and fiqh, and right? Just leave politics alone. Right? And you're fine. And Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam absolutely refused. This is not going to happen. It's like, no way, right? So he ordered, he cannot kill Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam because people, and again, the scholars of the time, because of what Salah ad-Din did, had such a mark on people. And he realized that people told him, you kill him, you will have a revolt. So be careful. So he decided, okay, let's put him in house arrest. Let's put him in house arrest. And then he sends someone to him, telling him, okay, the Sultan is willing, khalas, he's going to take it easy with you. You don't have to, just go to the Sultan, kiss his hand. And that's it. And he laughed, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, and said, Wallahi, I'm living in a world and you're living in another world. I would not be happy for him kissing my own hand, let alone for me to kiss his own hand. So what are you speaking about? Where are you living, kind of, right? So Saleh Ismail was very upset. So he house arrest, right? And one situation that happened, he's now going to meet the Franks. The armies are meeting, right? And he had his tent, and now the Franks are coming to visit Saleh Ismail, And the tent beside him is where Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam is. And he's in his tent doing what? Praying, reading Quran, doing his own thing. And alhamdulillah, he's safe, but he's under arrest. And now the Franks came to meet Saleh Ismail. And they sit, and then Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, they can hear him recite Quran. Right? So now Saleh Ismail, trying to win a point, says, do you hear this? Do you hear this recitation? And they said, yes. He told them, this is the biggest priest for the Muslims, the biggest sheikh in the Muslim land. And I captured him and put him under arrest because he spoke against you. You see what he's trying to do, right? And you know what was the response? They told him the following. If that man was in our camp, we would be washing his feet and drinking the water out of his feet. What? And this is what Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam had such hayba, as you'll see it, has such reverence. They saw something, the way the man was, the way he embodied Quran, the izzah, the hayba, the way he recited. They thought, Christians, Catholics, the concept of saints, they said this must be a saint, right? So they said, you're doing this to him? This man is a saint. How dare you do this? But this is who Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam was. And he didn't stop. He was speaking to soldiers. He was preaching, and other scholars are preaching as much as he can. But now the time came where the attack is going to happen against Egypt. And Saleh Najmuddin now faces a dilemma. I'm not facing the army of Sham only. I'm facing the Crusades, the Crusaders with 30,000 Franks, plus the army of the Muslims of Sham. It's 60,000. His army was at the time not big enough. Yes, he has Mamluks, but those elite warriors, there is not many of them. And what can he do? What do you think? What's the solution for this? That's in trouble, right? So he needs an alliance. Who was the best alliance of the time? He did something really interesting, right? He decided to use the Khawarizms. What do you mean, the Khawarizm? Remember the Khawarizm Shah soldiers. Remember the 400,000. They got defeated. They got beaten. Many of them got killed, but many of them survived. Now remember, we said they had one trait. They were mercenaries. A lot of Muhammad ibn Khawarizm's army, they had a problem of what? They weren't really very loyal. They fight for money. So now a lot of those soldiers are available on the market. Right? This is how they view it. We fight for whoever give us money. Now Khawarizm is destroyed. They're out on the loose. So he contacted them. Guess what? I need help. I'll pay you. Come help me against the Franks. And they responded, okay, you pay us that much. And he said, fine. I'll pay you, just come. And a lot of the soldiers gathered together and started heading towards Egypt. Here is the interesting part. Now the reports was the following. On their way to Egypt, they're passing through Sham, and they destroyed so many Muslim villages on the way. They're mercenaries, basically. They care less. So on the way, now news started those people you're bringing, unlike the other soldiers, the soldiers of Damascus, they're Muslims, so they will not destroy Muslim villages on their way, right? You see, they're fighting, it's a political, but people are safe. Those soldiers weren't this way. They're mercenaries. They care less. They're about what? Looting, getting stuff. If they're passing by a village, okay, let's take the cattle from this guy. Let's take the money from this. Let's destroy this house. Ruthless. They didn't differentiate Muslim, Christian, doesn't matter. So the news now reached him that be careful, those people are يعني, a little bit not like our regular soldiers. They're really mercenaries. Nevertheless, they joined the army of Egypt. And a battle happened. It's called the Battle of Al-Harbiya or Forbie. And again, it's like about 643. And this battle is between the army of Egypt and the Khwarizms versus the Franks and the army of Damascus. And the interesting thing, the battle starts. Remember, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam was there. And some surprise happened in the battle. Once the battle started and the Franks attacked, most of the army of Damascus switched sides. Because internally, because they were not, can you imagine seeing yourself, I'm fighting Muslims and I look beside me. Think about it in today's world. How will that sound? If the other flag, you know what flag I'm speaking about, is on one side and you're like, I'm fighting on their side. How do you feel? So, and all the scholars are, so when they saw it in the battlefield, they couldn't take it. So the Franks attacked and the Egyptians on the other side, and most of the army of Damascus decided, what, let's attack the Franks. They switched sides. And of course, Salih Ismail now is out of control. And he fled the battlefield. For the Franks, you know what happened? Complete massacre. Because now they're surrounded. They call it the minor battle of Hittin. Most of this army of 30,000 got decimated. Completely wiped out. Right? It was a major victory for the Muslims. Now, one of the things that happened, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam now goes to which camp? To the Egyptian camp. And Najm al-Din of Egypt welcomed him, and he said, you're more than welcome now. If they don't know your value in Damascus, come to Cairo. And he takes him back, and now Cairo has Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam over there, right? Major defeat for the armies of Damascus, major defeat for the Franks. And the best thing is what? It looks good. The second thing that happened, once this happened, the next step was what? Jerusalem. Right? Remember, Jerusalem was given to the Franks. The Khwarizmians, again being who they are, just started following, and they entered Jerusalem. But this time it wasn't like Salah ad-Din, unfortunately. They started killing and destroying Christians. They didn't care less. You remember Salah ad-Din when he entered Jerusalem? It was like Umar ibn al-Khattab. It was like the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. This time, the Khwarizmians were very destructive. And again, here you can see Najm al-Din started to think those people are out of control. This is like, what are you doing? This is not our way. Right? So they started, yes, they took the city, but they caused a lot of damage in there. And it didn't end up there. Something else completely unexpected happened. Salih Ismail, the ruler of Damascus, noted the Khwarizms and noted what those are nothing more than mercenaries. So what do you think he did with them? He overpaid, right? Well. How much are you getting paid for this? I'll double pay. And you switch side and let's attack Najm al-Din. And guess what happened? Pay, and they flipped sides. And Najm al-Din found himself only with his army of Mamluks, to his shock. And now he's being attacked by the Khwarizms that he brought, and those are massive in number, right? With the army of Damascus. Another battle happened. And he saw something in that battle. The Mamluks were very loyal. Despite that they were outnumbered, despite the odds, they stood firm, and it was obvious in the battlefield they were more of an elite warrior. They succeeded in defeating the Khwarizms and the army of Damascus, right? Alhamdulillah, right? And by the way, this was the end of the Khwarizms, right? Because their destruction, everybody, even later, the Ayyubid themselves decided to get rid of them. They caused so much damage. This is not the way, right? And again, it shows us there is a lesson here. I hope you understand. Ends do not justify the means. Ends do not justify the means. We do not, yes, the end might be noble, but certain type of people, we do not seek their help because they will cause more destruction than help at the end of the day, right? So when this happened, now Najm al-Din got his lesson. This method of mercenaries doesn't work. The only people that were steadfast with me was who? The Mamluks, right? So he decided what? I need to make an army of the Mamluks. And this was the step that happened next. So now the situation ended up that you have Egypt and Jerusalem, right, under Najm al-Din, and again the same situation in Sham being divided. But the one lesson was Najm al-Din decided this Mamluk army it started to be an institution, literally. He started, okay, let me buy by the thousands. Let me make an army, speaking 10,000 of elite warriors. And now I know the system. You bring them in, you teach them, you invest in them, you treat them nicely, you teach them everything, the love of Islam, and it's a process. 10 years from now, I'll have an army of those Mamalik. That was his thing, right? So that started happening in Egypt, the Mamluk institution, if you will. Now, what happened next? I don't know if we can, how far we go, while this was happening, while the events I'm speaking about is happening, now switching back to the Mongols. And we see something interesting. By the order of the Great Khan, this very strange order, which is what? Massive amount of territories. He issues a command, no grazing allowed. Anybody with cattle, everybody, you are not allowed to graze in this wide lands anymore. What do you think is happening? That indicated something, I don't know if you can see it or not. So vast amount of grass should not be touched. It's ponies' fuel. Meaning what? I'm preparing for a second attack, right? And this is going to be a huge attack. And I need fuel for my ponies, right? So he's preparing the arena, the scene for what? Massive amount of ponies are going to come this way. What is going on, right? Who's the Khan? What is going on? Now, this is the rise of Hulagu Khan. Do you know Hulagu? Right? So now this new Khan, Menku Khan, that came to power, had the same ideas of Genghis Khan, that we are the rulers of the entire world. And it's time to dominate the Muslim world altogether. So now it's version 2.0 of Genghis Khan. I want to make a campaign. The target of this campaign is not just get one city, is to wipe Muslims out. The campaign, the target was, number one, destroy the remnants of the assassins, because I don't trust them. Number two, take over the Muslim Khilafah. Enough is enough. Number three, take over Sham, take everything, and start going to Africa. Domination, right? Now this is a big goal. So to start planning for this goal, he put Hulagu in charge of this campaign. Took 10 years of preparation. The army, 200,000. 1 million ponies. Now you see that's why he needs this, right? And again, containers. He made sure everything. He started making a thorough plan for this campaign. The Muslim world is going to be subjected to a massive wave of a Mongol invasion, right? While they are unprepared. This is what's going to happen next. Now, he did other things, right? But while this was going, subhanallah, things were tighter for the Muslims, right? The same time this is happening, Jerusalem fell to the Khwarizms, remember, and they did what they did. The news went to the Pope in Europe. What does he do? Asks for another crusade, right? Jerusalem fell. And then the kings of Europe, especially the king of France at the time, Louis IX, he responded. He was a very devout Christian, if you will. And he saw that as his responsibility. And he said, you know what? I'm in with all the armies of France and Germans, and it's time for another campaign. We will go, retake Jerusalem from the Muslims. And the Muslims were going to face two things simultaneously. The Seventh Crusade from one side, at the same time, Hulagu was attacking from the other side. You get the idea Now, fortunately, one fortunate thing happened. Of course, Louis, he's that Mongol alliance. So he sent, to Menku Khan and Hulagu for what? Buddy, right? But negotiations fell on their face. The negotiations did not, remember why? What was the mistake here? There was one mistake. The Mongols did not have this, friend or foe. This is not in their dictionary. They don't use friend or foe. Follower or foe. There is no friend. There is no equal. So you're one of two people. Either you're under me or you're my enemy. The Franks spoke to them as what? Equals. Let's have an alliance. That language for the Mongols were like, what do you mean alliance? Alliance, okay. Louis, you come and the Pope come under us. Subjugate yourself, be our followers, then we have an alliance. So it didn't go well, fortunately, alhamdulillah, right? So they attacked separately. They weren't, in cohesion. That was one at least positive thing here. 5. What did Louis the Seventh did? His campaign came, right? And he, interestingly enough, you see the direction of the campaign. Paris, right? The Mediterranean. But it did not go as usual to Jerusalem. It went to Egypt. And this is the second time this happened. The Fifth Crusade was the same way. He did not target Jerusalem. It's the second time he knows Egypt is the problem. Egypt is where, the forces, if we take Egypt, everything else will fall. So his idea was what? Again, let's attempt to take Egypt again. So the Franks appear in the city of Dumyat, which is the portal city in Egypt by the Nile River, right? Massive fleet. We have 2 minutes here, so, right? Now, at the time, the Sultan, Najm ad-Din, remember, of Egypt, he was getting sick and sicker and sicker and sicker. He was not in a good state. So he sent some of his troops to just guard the city of Dumyat, right? And he was not able to go there himself. And the troops went, Dumyat is very well fortified, right? And the Franks appeared, and they started to land, and some skimmers started going in. But here we see the negative effect of rumors. Where is the Sultan? Where is the Sultan? Where is Najm ad-Din? He's not here. What happened? Najm ad-Din died. Oh, there is a revolt. We have no ruler. So what happened among the commanders and the troops? They were so disturbed, they decided to do what? Retreat. So they retreated, leaving the city of Dumyat unprotected. The people of Dumyat, having faced the Franks before, they know what will happen to them. They all were so scared, the army left. They left of the city of Dumyat and retreated. The Franks landed to find the city of Dumyat. The doors are open and the city is intact and nobody's there. And they end up taking the city of Dumyat, right? And of course, to the agony of the sick Sultan, this is the key of Egypt. It fell without a big fight. And things now seemed very stark. What will happen, right? Now, Louis, right? He started doing what? Okay, we know the next step. We're going to take the river all the way to Cairo. Najm ad-Din decided, unlike Al-Kamil, gather all my army, gather all the Mamalik. We are going to meet them en route. He goes by the city of Mansoura. He's sick. The man is seriously sick, very seriously sick. Yet he decided, I will go myself. And of course, an interesting thing, his wife was always with him. And they go and they camp in Mansoura. He gathers all the Mamalik, now start making a plan. How are we going to defend them? How are we going to face them? And now another showdown was going to come. And if the Mamluks are defeated in Mansoura, Egypt can fall. So that was an extremely serious situation that was happening at the time. But what will happen next? Of course, Louis advances towards the city of Mansoura. Yes, this is true, right? You know who that is, right? So you can ask Sheikh Atif about the Mansoura and this battle. He'll give you very interesting narratives about it, right? So he approaches the city of Mansoura and there is a river. And the Mamalik are on one side and he's on the other side. And they have built massive trebuchets and fire-throwing equipment. And they start bombarding the camp of the Franks, right? And they started a lot of skimmerish, if you will, and a lot of attacks against them. And for about 2 weeks, they could not pass, right? And the situation is okay, nobody's giving up. Interestingly enough, something interesting happened. When they decided we have to go on, we have to march to Cairo, we're not giving up, right? And I'm going to mention this. Okay, let's mention this now. I'll stop the battle scene. In the battle scene, 2 scholars were there. Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam and Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhili. They were in the battlefield. Notice what I'm saying. They were not sitting in Cairo. They were with the soldiers. Doing what? Promoting. And okay, we'll wait after Salah, inshallah. After the adhan. Okay, so let's continue. I don't know. طيب. Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhili. Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhili, I don't know if you know this name. This is the Shadhiliya Tariqa, one of the Tasawwuf Turuq. If you're pro or that's not my point, this is history now, right? But I want to point one thing, right? Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhili, a great scholar, was in the battlefield. What was he doing? He was promoting people, not only soldiers, to fight the Franks. They said it was so effective, right? that he wrote something he called Hizb al-Nasr. Hizb al-Nasr is a dua that Abu Hassan al-Shadli wrote in this time. And he taught to the soldiers. It's a dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to destroy the opponent and bring victory to the Muslims. It was so powerful, they used to call it Sayf al-Shadili. Right? It's the sword of Shadili. And it invigorated soldiers so much that they said the Franks started to suffer from the Muslims, the regular civilians of Egypt, more than the Mamalik. Right? So one of the tricks that you read in books, so some of the people, they did something, watermelon. So one guy takes a watermelon, cuts it open, right? So it's hollow, puts it on top of his head, goes to the Nile River, right? And puts some watermelon beside him, and he starts what? Going inside. So the Franks, they saw watermelon, right? So what did they do? They went in to get the watermelon, and he had his, so he takes the guy. So a lot of operations were happening. And day after day, the Franks started to what? The attacks are getting more daring. And now it's not only the Mamalik, the Egyptian population, they're attacking us, right? So the presence of the scholars with the people invigorated resistance. Now, what will happen next? Who will win this battle, right? So now, something setback happens. Najm al-Din dies in the midst of the battlefield. And Shajarat al-Durr, his wife, realized that, and the top leaders, if this news spread to the soldiers, we saw what happened in Dumyat, right? So what do you do? So the interesting part, his loyal wife, he's married to, if you will, his wife, her name is Shajarat al-Durr, which means the tree of pearls, right? And his wife is a very interesting story. It's a love story. She was actually a slave, and he loved her so much, so he freed her, ended up marrying her. She was with him in everywhere he went. In the battlefield, in his trips, him and Shajarat al-Durr were like, kind of together. So even at that time, she was beside him, watching everything. So she was a very, very wise, politically informed woman. So she did something. She said, what? It's not good to tell the Muslims. So she agreed with the leaders of the Mamalik for the following. Let's keep this to ourselves. And I will sit in the room and I will talk to the doctor and will tell people he's sick. And I will go inside, whatever you want me to I will write it, and I have his khit, his seal, and the Sultan is doing this, right? So she kept the news secret to herself. But then, who's the new Sultan? There was a problem. Najm al-Din had one son, the elder son. His name is Turan Shah. And Najm al-Din said, this kid is not fit. I would never put him in power over the Muslims. He's not good. And he was like ruling some fort far away, and Najm al-Din was like, don't ever give him power over the Muslims. And his thought was, after I die, I'm going to leave Egypt to the Abbasi Khilaf. They put whoever they want. Now the queen, Shajarat al-Durr, was like, okay, the man died. What do I do? There is no time for Khilafah, and they'll send, what will happen? Right? So she made a decision. Let's get his son Turan Shah, right? Because we need someone. And I will maintain the country for him till he comes. A sultan with some negative traits is better than chaos. We need to, and especially in the time of an invasion, we just need a leader. So she sent one of the Mamluks, the leaders, Ayyubid, go and fetch him. Meanwhile, we will pretend that everything is okay. And the plans of the defense of the city of Mansoura started, right? Now the Mamluks were they love Salih, Najm al-Din. Among them is Baybars, very well-known name, right? Aqta, we'll see those people. They were there, and they put a plan for the defense of the city of Al-Mansoura. Now what will happen next? In the battle, the very famous battle of Al-Mansoura, inshallah, that's what we learn after Salah, inshallah. Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik, la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Yeah. You guys like the cliffhanger? دمياط بلدي. أنا عارف والله دمياط والله سبحان الله الله يحفظك الحمد لله. فاكرين كل التاريخ ده وحكايات شجرة الدر وأم علي عارف. أم علي هنقولها دلوقتي. الحمد لله. جزاك الله خير. Were the Khwarizmis Muslim? Yes. Okay. So the army was interesting. The majority were Muslims. but it included Buddhists, Christians. He employed everybody, but the majority is Muslims.
But they were just culturally rough.
You know the attitude of a mercenary. He says La ilaha illallah. He's a paid mercenary, right? And he's in it for what gain? So he views everything as fair game. I'm a soldier. You know how pirates are. Think of that attitude.
So Mamluks weren't considered mercenaries.
No. Mamluks were they're very loyal to their master, and you can see very extremely loyal to their masters. Not only that, even later they had a zealousy for Islam, and you'll see this. You see what you will see. The Mamluks will change things.
I'm going to take away the mic.
Oh,
I'll give it
please.
back to you once we finish the law.
Yeah, good. Inshallah.
Well, usually if they're like, well, it's your fault. That's what I think. What happened is I and I kind of felt bad, right? Yeah, I just
Let you know the live chat will, the live stream will hear us.
Bismillah. We'll start in 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. So like I'll just like get your food, be seated. You know, we'll start about 8:15. Is that good? 8:10, 8:15. Good. Okay. So just 5-10 minutes, inshallah. بسم الله بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. Till everybody gets seated in this 1 or 2 minutes, I'll tell you a couple of stories about the scholars we're speaking about before we return back to the battlefield. So we will start where we stopped like in 2-3 minutes. But I thought it's good to like just use it for something, inshallah. So if you're eating, it's okay. Continue to eat, you know. We have like 2-3 minutes. Those are extra stories, right? So one thing, again, remember I mentioned 2 names. So if you look to the time period, now this battle of Mansoura is in the year 648. And if you draw a line, who were the scholars of the time, you'll see many prominent names. In the area of Ilm al-Hadith, we had Imam Ibn Salah, very famous Hadith scholar that was in Egypt, in Damascus, and the very famous Imam al-Nawawi. You know, who knows Imam al-Nawawi? The 40 Hadith Nawawi, Riyadh al-Salihin, the Sharh of Sahih Muslim, one of the greatest scholars, right? He lived in that time, and we'll see his effect later in the times of the Mamluks. He will have a role as well. But at that moment, the 2 scholars that were very prominent in what we're speaking about today, they lived in Egypt. One was Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam. Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam, they call him Sultan al-Awliya, right? For like, again, you saw his strength. I'll give you one story about him. When he went to Egypt, remember how Najm al-Din saw that great scholar, invited him back to Egypt, right? And he went to Egypt, and a very interesting story. He goes to Egypt and he sees Najm al-Din Ayyub, the Sultan, with all the Mamalik around him after he's victorious, right? And they're walking, and you know, and the Mamalik are of course in their horses and all the armor, and with the loudest voice, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam calls to Najm al-Din, and he tells him, Ya ibn Ayyub. He doesn't say a Sultan. Ya ibn Ayyub, how dare you being boastful like that and walking around your soldiers, and in your city there are places that sell wine. There is this that sell wine, and how dare you allow this? Is this what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to do? And he says, yes, Sayyidi, it's not me. This was there from the time of my father. I didn't initiate that. So Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam tells him, are you among the people who says, Inna wajadna aba'ana ala ummah? Quotes a verse from the Quran. We found our forefathers a certain way and we just follow. How dare you? And he starts, and the Sultan just lowers his head and says, Khalas, you know, I by my command, all those places will stop. No more wine in Cairo. Later on, people asked him, weren't you afraid? He had the Mamalik around him, and the Mamalik, those Mamluks love him, and you're speaking, they can just destroy you, they can just attack you. And he said, my son, when I looked at him, I remembered my reverence for who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And this Sultan looked like a kitten in front of me. And then they asked him, why did you admonish him? You embarrassed him in front of everybody. As an advice, shouldn't it be done in secrecy? You get the idea? Like, you embarrassed him. Why? You could have went and told him in private. And he said, my son, my purpose was different. I saw him riding, and I saw all the Mamluks around him, and I saw their strength and power, and I was afraid that arrogance and self-admiration is going to play in his head. So I wanted, my purpose was to humble him in front of people, lest he become too arrogant and so full of himself. And you can see here his intent is what? He's guarding the Sultan's heart. You see that? Because strength and power can really play with the head of people, right? Imam al-Shadili in the battlefield, they asked him one thing, especially in the battle of al-Mansoura. Not only he used to develop this Hizb al-Nasr, the latency of victory, which was very powerful, he used to fight himself. And at that time, his vision was not that great. It was a little bit impaired, him being old. So a man came and asked, Sayyidi, you are so brave, you fight so well in the battlefield, yet you have impaired vision. We know that your eyesight is not, how do you do that? And his response was, فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. It is not the eyesights that go blind, it is the hearts that go blind. Says my son, when Allah opens the insight of the heart, it does not matter the sights of the eye. Right? So that's again, those scholars, they weren't just teaching on the pulpit and away, they were in the events. العز بن عبد السلام, Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, Abu al-Hasan al-Shadli were in the battlefield of al-Mansoura. Just emphasizing this. They weren't in Cairo. They were with the soldiers. That is why what will happen, as you will see now, happened, right? Right. So let's now return to the line of the events, right? And go back to the Battle of al-Mansoura. Remember? So something happened. They camped, as I said, you had the Franks camped on one side and the Muslims, and they started throwing arrows and trebuchets against each other. And days passed and the Franks cannot cross the river, and the Muslims are getting more daring. And every night, you know, I'm speaking about the Muslim population, not even the soldiers. The Franks started to feel that they're being attacked from everywhere, and the Muslims are getting more audacious, even the farmers, you know, and things weren't well. But one night something happened. It seems a traitor from the Muslim camp. And I tried to find more information. I'm not sure. Some people say he was a Christian. Some people say, well, I don't know for sure. But somebody from the Muslim camp went to the Franks and said, guess what? I know a place in the river where it is very shallow. And if you follow me, you can cross the river because it's very shallow at that place from this area. And you can go to the other side. So they paid him a lot of money. And the king, King Louis, assigned his brother, Roberto, you know, take some of the strongest forces, the Templars, and some of the strongest knights, you know, the vanguard, and head this, go to the other side and see what happens. And indeed, nighttime, they follow this man, and subhanallah, he shows them a place by the river, and they start crossing, and they cross the river. And the Muslims were not prepared for this. They were in their camp, you know, as usual. The Franks are on the other side, and the king's brother, Roberto, decides to attack and take the Muslims by surprise. So nighttime, before Fajr, the Muslims are doing their own business in their camp. You know, they're far from the Franks, and a full charge by the Knights of the Templars and the heavy Knights of the Franks, right? And it overwhelmed the Muslim camp. They weren't prepared. They were not on guard. Many people were sleeping, and it was a disaster in the Muslim camp. And it is said like they burned the camp, and some people said treason, and they started escaping and running away. But fortunately, the Mamluks, again, being trained in strategy, you always have a second line, right? So they had already prepared something in plan, right? And so they started running, and they head towards the city of al-Mansoura, as you see. And they went inside the city. Now the Franks saw the Muslims running, and they're killing them left and right. So they decide, we'll take the city of al-Mansoura. And the knights charge inside the city of al-Mansoura, right? So to take over the city. Once that happened, they discovered something really interesting. One of the young commanders, this name will stick with us, Rukn ad-Din Baybars. Baybars is a very powerful Mamluk, right? Has prepared this second line of defense. He has prepared al-Mansoura with some of the Mamluks there. In case they come, we trap them in the city, especially in the narrow street of the cities. And they think that the Muslims will not be able to fight the knights hand-to-hand close combat, right? To the surprise of the Frankish knights, they go inside the city of al-Mansoura, well armed, you know, with their shields and horses and iron, and they, when it comes to close to hand battle, they're superior. It says the Mamluks poured onto them from every single place. And some of the, even the settlers of the city of al-Mansoura start to help from on top of the roof, right? And it is said it was a massacre. Basically, for the first time, the Franks encountered the Mamluks in a close hand-to-hand combat. Remember what I said? They started to see that they're using maces, right? And the Mamluks are very well trained. So they were not running away, they engaged them. And they deliberately went into close hand-to-hand combat. They meant it. You know, in the narrow streets, they deprived them from the benefit of their horses. And the battle happened. Almost all the knights that went into this city were killed. Only a handful succeeded in just running away, including the brother of the king. It was a very well-designed ambush, right? And all this vanguard, if you will, was completely destroyed inside this famous battle of al-Mansoura. But it didn't end there. Baybars pushes forward and orders now, go to the attack. By the time the king has crossed, he finds what? His remnants of the troops are running back, followed by a full charge of the Mamluk cavalry, heavy cavalry. He barely stopped them. He could barely stop them, and he knew it's time to retreat. But now the Muslims were now very extremely audacious. They started following them. They started, trapping them. He realized it's not, he lost a major part of his army. So he's trying to retreat, to fall back. And his idea was, maybe I'll go back to Dumyat. But to his surprise, again, with the scholars present in the battlefield, the whole of Egypt was in stiff resistance. So his journey on the Nile River was not safe. The Mamluks are from one side and the people from the other side. They blocked the river, they trapped the boats, the logistics, he could not have supplies, and he tried to make a stand in Fariskor, and a second battle happened in the place called Fariskor, right? And Louis, with whatever is left, made a stand, and the Mamluks surrounded him with the peoples and the people of Egypt and the scholars. And this fierce battle ended in what? Ended in a complete destruction of the Crusaders, to the extent the king himself was imprisoned by the Muslims. They captured King Louis himself and all his commanders, right? The Mamluks were not as forgiving. So and this again, you will see this, unlike Salah ad-Din, their view of the Crusaders was, don't be lenient with them. You let them go, they attack again. So if you're captured, they'll kill, right? So they were not showing any mercy to those Franks, right? They left Louis and some of his people, and he was captured, right? And then they demanded, if you want your own release, 800,000 golden dinars, right? That's the condition, right? And of course, give back the city of Dumyat, and all the Muslim prisoners are released. And that was the end of the Seventh Crusade. A major disaster, a major victory for the Muslims. The victory of Mansoura and Fariskor was a turning point. It also introduced the power that there is a new element in play. The Mamalik are not something to be taken lightly. And they're very capable on the ground. And again, now what happened? The reputation, the Mamalik viewed themselves as what? We saved Egypt, right? But remember what was the problem? The Sultan was dead, right? They were thinking, our Sultan is there, but he was already dead. And Shajarat al-Durr was what? Ruling on his behalf. Fortunately enough, his son, Turan Shah, came to Egypt and took power. And they announced that, yes, the Sultan died, but now your new Sultan is the son of Saleh. And the Mamalik, again, their loyalty is to this household. So they all were, very loyal to this is the son of our Ustad, right? So they all gathered around him, and khalas, he's the Sultan, no problems, right? But a surprise happened. What is it? The new Sultan of Egypt, remember Turan Shah, we said his dad said what? Do not put this kid in power. They started to realize why. He said he gets drunk so bad, right? He started treating everybody bad, including Shajarat al-Durr. Shajarat al-Durr is the one that brought him, is the one that was very loyal to his father, the one that really loved his father, the one that guarded. And remember what she did? He started, you are but a slave. You give me back all the jewelry that my dad gave to you. It's mine. And he started to put her down. He started to treat her bad. And she was like, kind of, what's going on? He did the same with the Mamalik of his father. The great Aqtai and Bibars and Aybak, those great, he started saying, what, who are you? And he started, I'm putting my men instead of you. I don't know you. In some instance, he was so drunk one night that he started getting his sword, going to look the candles, and he's holding the sword in his hand, and he's saying, like this I will do with the Mamluks of my father. Here goes Aybak. Here goes Bibars. Here goes... And he starts cutting the candles. And the Mamalik, of course, realized this is not good. He's planning to kill. Right? This man is unreliable. He's like, there is something wrong there. And he's the ruler, and he's going to turn against us. Now remember, the Mamluks are trained for what? Their strategy, right? And their best defense is what? They have one rule. They don't go for the defensive. Strike first. They're trained in warfare. And you'll see even later on, you will see that that's always their method. They're not going to wait. If I see an enemy, the best strategy, I don't wait and sit till you do something. And therefore, this concept of game theory, what are you thinking, and mind reading. And they said, okay, it's clear for us that this man is not good. So we have to do something about it. And Shajarat al-Durr speaks to them, and they find that the wife of their Ustad is on the same page. And indeed, they decide that's the end of it. We cannot let this man continue. And the Mamluks decide to do what? They kill Turanshah. Right? Remember, I told you the Mamluks are like, they're very aggressive, right? And that's, if they doubt something, it's the sword immediately, right? So they killed Turanshah. But now there is a problem. Who's the Sultan? We're safe. But who takes the seat? Us, the Mamalik, Aqtai, which is the strongest of us, Baybars, who? Because people look at the Mamalik as what? You were one day a slave. Will people accept us? You know, how will we do this? Who's the new Sultan? The Ayyubiyin of Sham, they were fighting Egypt. When they see that this is vacant, they're going to come and invade again. We need someone on this chair. Who? And they said, okay, something interesting happened. Strategizing, here is the best choice. So Najmuddin is dead, Turanshah is being killed. Which one should we pick? And guess who did they pick? The queen. They decide the best person to rule Egypt in the time is not the Mamalik. They will not be accepted. Egypt will have a queen. This is, I know nowadays it's like the Queen of England. In this time, Muslims, queen, what? So they told Shajarat al-Durr, you're the wife of the Ustad. You're the wife of all of us will agree on you. Take the seat. And you were ruling already. He was dead and you already did it. And she saw in herself, they're right. I can do this. And you know, and again, the interesting thing, the chair has its power. Let me put it this way. This chair, don't underestimate the deception of sitting on that chair, right? It can really play with the head. And she said, I can be the queen. And she takes the throne of Egypt. So now, Egypt is being ruled by Shajarat al-Durr. And she starts adding her name, right? She says, Al-Malika As-Salihiyya. Notice then As-Salihiyya, meaning what? She's reminding people, you know, Salih, Najmuddin, I'm As-Salihiyya, right? Al-Musta'simiyya. Al-Musta'sim was the Khalifa of the Muslimin, right? I also belong to him. Walidat al-Sultan Khalil, the mother of the young boy, the young Sultan, the son of Najmuddin Khalil. So I'm here till the Sultan, you know, comes up and he'll take power. And she started taking power and, you know, but people were not very happy. Like, you know, this is a very difficult time. What do you mean a queen? The Khalifa of the Muslimin sent a letter to Egypt mocking them, saying, you know, he says the following, if you don't have enough men, let us know. So we will send some men to you so that they can sit and rule. Like mocking the Egyptians, right? And again, it was unrest and it's fitna. And so now what should we do? And she tried left and right. And, you know, and again, once you know that some people, right, in the time, oh, it's a queen. Maybe she's weak. Maybe they started, you know, their plans to do something to Egypt. So Shajarat al-Durr is very clever. So okay, what should I do? What do you think is her next plan to be? It's like, I need to stay on that seat, but they're not going to accept a queen. Not in this time. Even in this country today, if there is a president that's a female, you saw what people are thinking, right? So imagine, we're speaking what, the year 1200, 800 years ago, right? Right? So here she came with another idea. Well, what is it? Maybe I can marry one of my Mamalik. So I'll pick one, remember, like under her, remember this? Right? So there is two big Mamluks, right? Faris ad-Din Aqtai, under which Baybars is, this is the strongest one of them, the commander of the forces, right? And there is another guy, Izz ad-Din Aybak, more lenient, more, you know, more kind, not as high in aspiration. So she said, if I can get married to one of them, then he becomes the Sultan. So it's not me, it's him. But I am the real Sultana. You got it? Like, so I'll put him on the chair. He's just in front of the people, but from behind him, I need to be like, I'm the one really controlling. So I need the weakest. You get the idea? I'm not going to pick the strongest. So her choice naturally fell to who? Aybak, right? So she said, no, I'm not going to choose Aqtai. He's so strong. He's so powerful. I can't play him. So let's take this kind guy that has no aspiration, was, lenient, does not interested, and what? Now you're the sultan. So Aybek said, that's not bad. Get a second wife and get the chair. Good deal, right? Alhamdulillah, Bismillah. And I can imagine him going to his wife saying, what can I do? It's for the sake of Egypt. They made me do it. It's a sacrifice, honey. Like, what can I do? Please, it's like I'm not doing it for myself, Can you imagine the lines, right? Anyway. So here is what happened. Now, once that happened, something interesting happened. Aybek turns to be very clever. So he wasn't as weak and meager as she has hoped for. He started what? Gradually, slowly acquiring power. He started buying his own mamalik. He started gathering and he started making what we call al-mamalik al-mu'azziyya, referring to him as Izz-ad-Din Aybek, right? Those are my mamalik. And he put on them one of the strongest men of the time, Sayfuddin Qutuz. This is an important name here, right? And now what happens? You have Aqtai versus Aybek. You see this dynamic? And Aqtai is not happy. Who? Aybek? Aybek is not, and he's the sultan. And I call him the sultan. And and he's like lower. Remember the Mamalik? They were loyal to who? Their ustaz. But between each other, it's competition. Remember how they were like, they're competitive with each other. So now he starts looking, who's he? He's weaker than me. I'm better than him. Why is he in power? He should not be in power. Aybek of all people. And he started treating him badly. So for example, everybody would say, Sultan al-Mu'izz al-Din Aybek. Right? Aqtai would tell him, Ya Aybek. No Sultan, no Mu'izz, you're Aybek. You're the one that lower than me. I'm the higher one. And then he did something that really played on the wrong. He said, well, how did this guy get power? Through marriage. He got married to Shajarat al-Durr, and Shajarat al-Durr has some legitimacy. Is this the way you get power? Well, interestingly enough, maybe I should get married to one of the daughters of the Ayyubiyin in Sham. The Ayyubid family in Sham, they have daughters. Maybe I go get married to one of them, then I become to the royal family, right? And under now that pretext, this is a princess, the Ayyubi household, maybe I can have access to. So he had talks, and he started getting engaged, and there was talks he's going to marry an Ayyubi princess. And he went to Aybek, and he told him, by the way, prepare a place for me in the palace, the ruling palace, because me and my wife are coming. Now, Aybek, how do you view this? You see what's going on? This is what? And remember, those are Mamluks, right? So he viewed that as what? This is probably going to end up bad. He's planning to throw me away. And see, this is the problem. You cannot act on mind reading from a fiqhi perspective. But they thought differently. They, again, strike first. Don't wait. So he saw, this is it. This man is definitely plotting for something. He's going to take over, and he's going to take the seat. So what should I do? Exactly. Strike first, right? So what happens? Ambushes Aqtai, invites him for dinner, orders her soldiers, and they kill Aqtai. Right? And now what happens? All the Mamalik, that al-Mamalik al-Bahariya or Rukn al-Din Baybars, now it became what? Let's hunt them down. Right? And it ends up that Rukn al-Din Baybars and many of those Mamalik, they ended up leaving Egypt and running to Sham because they were afraid of what's going to happen to them. And now he takes what? Now power is, Aqtai is gone. I am now on charge, right? And now I have control of Egypt. And his real face starts to appear. Now Shajarat al-Durr is not very happy with this, right? It's like she's now behind the scenes. Remember that. He's just really put her in her place. But then something else happened. Well, Aybek thinks, not a bad idea. Just in case anybody's thinking, anybody from Egypt? Egyptians here, right? Yeah. Okay. So, any guys from Egypt? Just if you have this idea, just like فتح بقى ودانك واسمع كويس, right? So here Aybek starts thinking, interesting. Why not? It's a good idea. Getting an Ayyubid princess. That's a very good claim to royalty. maybe I should do that as well. So he starts opening negotiations with the Ayyubid. Can I get married to one of your princesses? Right? A third wife. Right? What do you think happened? Oh yeah, exactly, right. Oh, because the wise Shajarat al-Durr now sees this, and is that what he wants to do? He thinks he is going to get married someone over me, and she's going to come here, and she's going to become the princess, and no. This is not going to happen. If this is what he thinks, this is what he gets. And guess what happens? She plots and she kills her husband. You see what's going on? So it's a very bad idea, right? And now that's a problem. So and she didn't think ahead. She's very wise, but somehow jealousy or what, something happened. When you do that, what will happen to you? Did you think it doesn't matter? She's not taking my place. That's it. And the solution is, just be very careful if you're planning something like that, right? It's my recommendation, right? And now what? The throne is empty. And I want you to see everybody's dead. Right? Did you see that? So who's going to take the throne? And here, the young Saifuddin Qutuz finds himself, he's the only one. Right? And without, I have to take the throne, right? But then a problem happens for Shajarat al-Durr. The first wife of Aybak, her name is Ali, right? Comes and complains, she killed my husband. This woman killed my husband, and that's not acceptable, and we should do something about it, and blah, blah, blah. And Saifuddin did what? I have a run to, this is it's you ladies, right? Basically, right? You deal with this, I have other things to do, right? So he said, okay, you know what? You deal with it. Here is Shajarat al-Durr. You guys talk about, do whatever, right? Because at the time, he's thinking about what? This time, the Mongols and the Franks. Right? So the country, it's not the time for this. We have the Mongols. At this time, Hulaku was on the doors of Egypt when this was happening. Right? It was really, really very serious. So he was like, there's no time for this quarrel. There is bigger fish to fry. So deal with each other. Here. And he gave Shajarat al-Durr to Ali, right? What happens? A very famous story in Egypt. I don't know if you guys know it. What is it? She says, okay. She comes in with some woman on her side with the slippers, the qubqab, right? You know the slipper, it's wooden, right? And they beat Shajarat al-Durr to death. A very feminine way. So I'm saying, you have to be careful, right? Talking to the men here. It's like, let that be a lesson. It's just like, who knows what happens, right? And here is the interesting part, and those are, I don't know how true those are, right? There is different variants. Now, when that happened, she had her son, his name is Ali, right? And Qutuz decides what? He's a kid. But guess what? He's the son of Aybak. Let's put him on the throne, and I will be his guardian, right? Now, when this event happened, Ali she cooked like a very interesting dessert, right? And she started distributing it for people. And it's called what? Mu'ali, like you're Egyptian, right? So that's where it came from, right? Now, why did she do that? Because she killed Shajarat al-Durr or her? I don't know. Right? So when you eat Mu'ali, just remember that, right? You ever taste that, right? Anyway, and here is the interesting part. That's the lesson. Did you see this? How many people died for the chair? Isn't that interesting? Right? So Najm al-Din dies. Then you have Shajarat al-Durr, Turan Shah, Aybak, Aqtai, dead. And what remains? The throne. This is what the hunger for the life of this world can do to people. Right? There is a story in Tirmidhi, and I'll say it quickly. It's narrated that Isa alayhi salam had some of his companions with him, and they don't have much money, and they were hungry. So he gave a little bit of money to one of them and said, go to the town and bring some food for us. The man goes, he can only buy 3 loaves of bread. And there is many people. So on the way back, he eats one of them. And he goes back to Isa alayhi salam and tells him, here, 2 loaves of bread. So Isa alayhi salam looks at him and says, who ate the 3rd loaf of bread? And the man says, what are you speaking? There is no third loaf of bread. And it's only 2 loaves of bread. And Isa alayhi salam said, fine, right? Follow me. And they're walking and there is a river and tells everybody, hold my hand and don't look. And Bismillah, and they cross the river. And it's a miracle. And then he looks to this man and he says, I'm asking you by the one who made us walk on water, who ate the 3rd loaf of bread? And the man says, no, there is no 3rd loaf of bread. It's fine, right? And it continues till eventually they go to a desert, right? And Isa alayhi salam starts saying what? Okay, sit down. And he starts putting a heap of sand, like building like just a mountain of sand. He builds 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. And he makes dua, Ya Rabbi, turn them to gold. And they turn to gold. Right? And then he looks to that man and he tells him the following. The first one is for me. The second one is for you. The third one is for the one that ate the 3rd loaf of bread. I ate the 3rd loaf of bread. Right? And Isa alayhi salam said, okay, they're all yours. All of them. Take all of them. But don't accompany me anymore. And the man says, fine. And notice, you're leaving Isa alayhi salam for gold? But the man is like, oh, it's a good deal. Let me be. And Isa alayhi salam says, take all of them. I don't want anything. And leaves. Now the man is sitting in the desert. Can you imagine, with heaps of gold, right? Daydreaming. Little does he know, 3 thieves are passing by. A man in the desert, gold. So what do? They come, they kill this man, right? And they take the gold. And they look, okay, good. 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you. And then they tell someone, go get some food while we think what we're going to do next. And this guy going now to the village to get some food, and he thinks, I put poison in the food. I give them the food, they die. I take their share. Right? Now, he doesn't know. Those 2 are now speaking to each other. He's 1, we're 2. Let's make a deal. He comes back, we jump on him, we kill him, we take his share. The man comes by, they jump on him, they kill him, then they eat the food, and all of them die. And Isa alayhi salam passing by from the same place, he finds what? 3 gold heaps, right? His companion dead and 3 people dead. And what does he say? This is the life of this world, and this is what it will do for those who deeply seek it with their heart. It kills them. Right? And that's a very important lesson, right? How many people died for this chain? And interestingly enough, the one that never meant, he does not even want it, was kind of pushed. You have to take it. He didn't want it. Qutuz at the time wasn't even aspiring for the throne of Egypt at all. It just fell into his lap, right? Which is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we'll see next, right? So while those things are happening in Egypt, right? What is going on the Mongol side? Remember, the story is in parallel, right? Those are events that took years in Egypt. Hulaku is not doing nothing, right? So Hulaku is proceeding with his plan. And he's proceeding with what? Now he gathered the army. It is like, they say it's like a small city, 200,000. Now, remember the negotiation failed with Europe, right? Remember we said that? But a small group of the Franks actually agreed to a treaty with the Mongols. Who are they? The Armenians. The Armenians were in Asia Minor by where Turkey is. Small group. Armenia at the time is not big. It's like about 200 miles by 100 miles, right? And Haythum, the ruler, understood very well he's not powerful enough. And if he does not make a treaty, when Hulaku will come, he's going to finish him too. And he did what they wanted. He traveled himself to Menku Khan, all the way to Mongolia, and presented himself as what? The true follower of my master, Menku Khan. And it is said the Mongols loved it. They loved that. And then they started what? Honoring him, raising him because he submitted, right? And now you are, and he promised him, when we come, all the cities that the Seljuks or the Muslims took from Armenia, we're going to give you all those cities back, right? But you will help us. The Armenians aren't like, why do you need their help? Any guess? I mean, it's not really their numbers or knowledge. You fought Muslims before. You know the area. You know the terrain. You know, your information is very important for me. So now we're the allied forces. And so he started with what? The Armenian kings. The Seljuk Sultan position was very interesting. The Seljuks, again, unfortunately, like at the time, very weak, right? They decided we're not up for Holako, so they did something very humiliating, right? The Sultan ordered a shoe to be made. And then he ordered, put my picture on the shoe. And he sent it to Holako and told him, it will honor this servant that you would put your head on top of my head. I don't know if you get... So he has the picture on the shoe, right? So when you wear it, you're putting your feet on what? On my head. And that will be, I'm your servant, it will honor me if you do that. Exactly. As long as I stay on my seat, everything is okay. So I'm proposing what? An alliance. I'll help you out. Just leave me alone. And the response was, of course, right? Join the alliance, right? The third one was, again, the alliance is starting to build, right? The third one, unfortunately, some of the Ayyubiyin in Sham, right? And one of them, subhanallah, like for this, the grandson of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. And the grandson of Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, here is the irony. What was his name? What is the name of Salah ad-Din? Al-Nasir Yusuf Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. His grandson, what was his name? Al-Nasir Yusuf Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. He had the same kunya, the same name. He's the direct grandson of Salah ad-Din with everything alike, but what a difference between who Salah ad-Din is and what this grandson of Salah ad-Din is. This grandson of Salah ad-Din, he was obsessed with one thing, taking Egypt. So he not only said, I'm your ally, I'm going to send my son with some of my troops to help you against the Muslims. I'm not only I'm in the alliance with some of my troops. Same thing with some of Badr ad-Din of al-Mosul. So some of the Mamluks started doing what? Aligning themselves with Holako. And again, now that's the interesting part. It became, it's not the Mongol army anymore. It became what? The alliance. Right? And the alliance, when you look to it, it's really not the alliance. It's one big guy and a lot of crumbs here and there, but it's a good name to have. This is the forces of the alliance that's coming to free Baghdad from the Caliph. Right? Anyway. Right. There was one obstacle. What about the assassins? The assassins were still there, right? And the assassins, they're very dangerous people. And the decision, again, this is the plot of Holako that I spoke about. I should just roughly get it quickly, but again, I'm just going to skip it for now and go to the events, right? As I said, he built alliance with the Franks, right? Antioch went in, Armenia went in. Some of the Ayyubiyin went in, so now he has an alliance going to attack Baghdad, right? One of the worst things that he did, as I said, and I'll surprise you. He had on the Muslim camp a traitor that by far was the worst among them all. It wasn't Nasir Yusuf. It wasn't Badr ad-Din of al-Mosul. It wasn't al-Mughith Omar of al-Kark. He had traitors and spies within Baghdad itself. He started recruiting people from Baghdad. And he succeeded in recruiting a very important traitor and a spy. Guess who it was? The Wazir himself. Yes. Mu'ayyid ad-Din al-Alqami. He recruited that. But then he started doing what? The psychological warfare had to start. So he had to convince, remember the Mongol attack, they have to convince you cannot fight. So he ordered raids. Raids on Iraq, raids on the villages, attack and extreme brutality. And he started what? Spreading rumors, spreading words. You see words that spread in the time like this. Mongols don't know defeat. Mongolian horses don't need food and they just can eat anything. The Mongol women, they fight as brave as the Mongol men. Right? So those rumors started spreading among the Muslims. Basically, again, they cannot be defeated. The psychological warfare of, again, extermination of villages, the mountains of skulls. He's reminding Muslims of the fate that will happen to you if you do not surrender. Again, the psychological warfare started. Mongols eat anything, including human flesh. Right? So like he started spreading this. Now, the first thing that he did, again, divide and conquer. He did not attack Baghdad. He started focusing on the assassins. And therefore the Khalifa foolishly said what? That's great. We hate the assassins. Finally, somebody's coming to take care of the assassins. That is not bad news. That's good news, right? So basically, oh, I see. All what's happening is not for me. It's for the assassins. I can call it you're deceiving yourself. Because we all know it's not going, really, it's going to stop there, right? So Hulagu starts with the assassins and he starts attacking their forts. The assassins, as we know, they're powerful. Their forts are very well fortified. And their forts, it was not easy to get the forts. So he needed siege equipment. So he sent to his allies. He sent to Al-Mosul. He sent to the Ayyubiyin. You Muslim engineers know how to build good trebuchets. I need more trebuchets, right? The ruler of Al-Mosul, interestingly enough, reported by Ibn Kathir, he received 2 letters at the same time. One from Hulagu and one from the Khalif. And I just want you to see the content of the letters, right? So you compare. From Hulagu Khan to, Badruddin. Send siege engines and siege engineers. From the Khalifa to send more belly dancers and more musical instruments. Do I need to speak? Is it obvious what's going on, right? He himself said the following. He said, read the 2 letters and weep for the state of the Muslims. Hulagu's asking for siege engines and this guy is asking for belly dancers. It's clear where is. And sometimes we have rich nations and things are happening and that's what they're doing. That's what they care for. And the other people, they are really seriously working. They work hard. They know what they're after. They know what technology to get. They're after technology. And yet other people are after what? Entertainment. So they send to the experts. Some are seeking the technology of the experts and others seeking what? The entertainment technology of the experts. No comments to be mentioned, right? You can draw your own conclusions, right? Anyway, so the battle against the assassins start. He takes some forts, but the forts are so well fortified and it's taking a long time. And I'm going to be brief, it's a whole thing. So Hulagu decides to go for deception. So he sends to Sheikh al-Jabal, their sheikh, right? And telling him, you know what? I'm not here for you. I'm here for the Khalifa. That's all what I wanted. So if you were to surrender, I'll spare you. If you were to surrender to me, we will form an alliance and I'll leave you. I'm not here after you. And both me and you will go against the Khalifa. That's what you want and that's what I want. And he kept at it till they believed him. And he started surrendering the forts of the assassins to Hulagu. Right? So Hulagu ended up taking all the forts of the assassins in the area. Now what happened to the Sheikh, Sheikh al-Jabal as they called him, He said, okay, send him to Menku Khan, send him to the great Khan of Mongolia, right, to negotiate with him. And they sent him all the way to Mongolia. Now Menku Khan receives the master of the assassins. What does he say? What do you think he did? He looked at him and he said, I don't know what's the point of bringing this man here. You only exhausted the mount that he rode till it. What was the point? That it was just an abuse of this mount. It was completely unnecessary. I have no use for him. Send him back. On the way back, he disappeared. He was killed. That was the end of the assassins, right? So it took the Mongols and Hulagu to get rid of the assassins. Once that happened, right, foolishly enough, right, they realized it was not about the assassins. The real target is actually Baghdad, right? And as we said before, Baghdad was really the top city in the world. You're speaking 3 million population. It's the most glamorous city of its time. There is no question about it. In terms of knowledge, in terms of architect, in terms of cleanliness, in terms of you name it. It was the gold, the jewel of the world, the entire world, right? People used to go to Baghdad everywhere, from Europe. This is the place to be. And Baghdad was, again, viewed by everybody. This is the seat of the Khilafah of the Muslimin. And that had still reverence in the hearts of people, right? So now that's Hulagu's real target. Baghdad. طيب. Interestingly enough, Hulaku himself, being his belief is what? Shamanism. So he believes in astrology, and he was scared. What will happen if we kill the Khalifa? See, he's thinking that, will something bad happen? Will the world change? Because this is the Khalifa of the Muslimin. And he decided to ask some of the Muslim astrologists. طبعا astrology is not, but there were some Muslims. And he started asking them, in your astrology, because this is how he thinks, if the Khalifa was to be killed, what will happen? So they started to scare him, right? So they started, if you kill the Khalifa, oh, great disasters will happen. All the ponies will die. The sun will not come up again. All the plants will die. Powerful destructive winds will blow. The great Khan will die, because this is the Khalifa of the Muslimin, and if his blood is shed, it will be terrible, and the world will change. And Hulaku now is what? Oh, is it true? Because he believes in shamanism, and okay, let's get people, is this true? He's like now afraid of it. Unfortunately, one man from the camp of the assassins, one of the people that he got, and this man, his name is Nusayr ad-Din al-Tusi. You don't have to remember this name, but even Ibn al-Qayyim lived later. He used to call this man as the atheist wazir of Hulaku. Right? This man went and told Hulaku, who told you that? This is completely untrue. Hey, Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed. Uthman ibn Affan was killed. Al-Hussein, the son of he was killed and nothing happened. Don't be afraid. Who told you this? Nothing bad happens. Those were great khulafa of the Muslimin, they're the companions. They were killed. Nothing at all happened. So all this is nonsense. So now Hulaku said, right? And now Hulaku had the heart to do what? Continue with his campaign, unfortunately. He sends a letter to the Caliph, right? Again, a part of the warfare. And I want you to read this letter carefully. This is the letter from Hulaku to the Caliph. And he says the following: undoubtedly, it has reached your ears through private and public channels what has happened to the world at the hands of the Mongol armies since the time of Genghis Khan. You have learned of the humiliation that befell the families of the Khwarizms and the Seljuks and other who were once gates of greatness. Yet the gates of Baghdad were never closed to any of those groups. Meaning what? The Khwarizmians, the Seljuks, How can it be then that it's close to us while we are more powerful than all of them? Now, we have advised you before. We tell you, avoid, this is Hulaku speaking, avoid hatred, conflict, and malice. Do not attempt to stand in our way, for you that will be in vain. And then he says, you must demolish the forts, fill the trenches, hand your kingdom over, and come to meet us. If you obey our command, you will be good. We will let you be, we will let your army be, no harm. If you try to stand against me, I will come after you, and there will not be a place in the heavens or the earth where you can hide from me, and I will get you. And basically, what the Mongols will do. So that now the Khalifa receives this letter. Remember, this Khalifa is completely out of touch. For like the last 100 years, I would say at least 150 years, the Abbasi Khilafah did nothing, even from the times of Salah ad-Din, right? But yet, look at the answer of the Khalifa to the Hulaku, right? And I would translate it like this way: oh, you foolish adolescent kid who wish for a short life, and who has been deluded by the favor of fortune and circumstances, imagining yourself as the ruler of the world, believing your words to be a decree and unshakable command. Why do you ask me of something you will never find with me? The prince, Hulaku, knows that from the east to the west, from the kings to the beggars, from the elderly to the young, all who believe in God and follow religions are my servants and soldiers under my command. I think, delusion, I don't know, right? I know what he's thinking here, right? When I decide to act, I will begin by settling the whole of Iran. Then I'll move to the lands of Turan, and I'll place each person in the right place. At that time, the face of earth will be filled with turmoil and unrest. However, I don't desire hatred and conflict. I do not wish to cause harm, right? And look, especially since I'm one heart and one tongue with the Khan and Hulaku Khan. This is a very interesting. He's saying what? I'm like you. We're good. We're friends. I'm with you. Let's have peace. Let's resume. Let's return, and we'll have peace between us, and we're good. right? This was the response. Words sound good, but there is no back behind it. That's the problem, right? He's not up to those words. Type. And I would say the following now. So like, again, preparing for what's going to happen next. And like, I don't know if we'll have time to go over this. So things have been not going well for the last 20 years in Baghdad, right? The wazir of the time, Mu'ayyid al-Alqami, he was a Shi'i, a Rafidi, right? And in Baghdad, there was sectarian violence between the Sunnah and the Shia. And lately, like in that time, there has been an attack by the Shia, followed by an attack from the Sunnah against the Shia, and the wazir was very upset, right? So the wazir decided to do what? Let me give loyalty to Hulaku. In return, if he wins, the Shia will take over. You see the idea here? Like, he will put us in power. We will take over this place if I put myself with him. So he started communicating with him. The other thing, which is a treason in my view, he started to reduce the size of the army of Baghdad, right? The army he started reducing it till the total number of the whole army of Baghdad, the Khilafah, was less than 10,000 at the time, including everybody, which is a very meager number for Iraq, nothing, right? And the army, of course, is not well trained at all. So the situation within Baghdad itself was not as great. And now, to the surprise of the Khalifa, Hulaku's attack started. And Hulaku's attack, it was not from one direction, right? So he came with his main army. He sent Kadbugha, one of his commanders, from the south. He ordered some of the armies from the region in Europe to go down from the north. He ordered the Armenians to come, from... So Baghdad was now going to be what? Surrounded. The interesting thing is the Khalifa. This is a huge army. The Khalifa, and don't ask me how, they could not detect this army till it was like 10 miles away from Baghdad. This is 200,000. You should have detected them since they are all over, right? But all of a sudden the Khalifa gets shocked. What is this? We have an army. Hulaku came with an army. And now the Khalifa is put like what? On the reality check. What should we do? And then he orders what? Let's have a meeting with all the high command. Right? And one interesting story, now Baghdad is surrounded, right? And the Khalifa doesn't know what to do. This situation happened, right? And this is narrated by Ibn Kathir, right? And Ibn al-Athir, like they narrate this story. And I'm just going to say it the way they wrote it. Now, Baghdad is surrounded. The Mongols are all over the place, an army of 200,000. It's a very serious situation. And it says the following. The Mongols surrounded the palace of the Khalifa, showering it with arrows from all directions, until a dancer who was playing and dancing in front of the Khalifa and amusing him was struck by one of those arrows that came through one of the windows. She was killed while dancing before the Khalifa. The Khalifa was deeply disturbed and terrified by this incident. The arrow was brought to him, and he found an inscription on the arrow. And what does the inscription read? Psychological warfare. When God, they use Allah, when Allah wills to enforce His decree and destiny, He takes away the minds of the wise till His decree befalls them. Right? Upon seeing this, the Khalifa was so upset. Now it's time for action. So what did he order? You got it, right? Yeah, that's what he's going to order is what? Increase precaution. And please put curtains around the palace everywhere so nobody gets hurt. I mean, when you hear this story, I don't think, what do you want me to say? Does that describe the situation? Where the Khalifa is, you're the Khalifa of the Muslimin, and this is what you're doing. Baghdad is being surrounded. It's serious. 3 million people in your hands, and the Mongols have 200,000, and this is what you're thinking about? Now, the interesting part, this phrase is a part of a hadith. The hadith is weak, the narration is weak. But the hadith in Arabic says, إذا أراد الله إنفاذ قضائه وقدره سلب ذوي العقول عقولهم حتى ينفذ فيهم قضاؤه وقدره فإذا مضى أمره رد إليهم عقولهم ووقعت الندامة. Then they feel regretful. So you can see they're quoting hadith and Quran. Right? They're using, and you'll see that more with Hulaku. He does that, right, in his letters. But this was the state of the Muslims, right? Now the question, fight or negotiate? And the wazir opinion was there is no way, of course, peaceful surrender is completely acceptable. We go on to negotiations and we negotiate a peaceful surrender. And Hulaku is a kind man. Hulaku will accept us. Hulaku will, so that's the only solution. Nevertheless, two people from the army side of the wazir, they decided this is not the solution. We have to fight. And the Khalifa decides, let's give it a try. Take the army of the Khilafah, go out and fight Hulaku. What do you think happened in that battle? He takes 10,000, goes out in Al-Anbar, which is northern Iraq, meets one of the armies, complete massacre, of course. Untrained, unprepared, and completely the size doesn't even, but they tried. So that failed. And the Khalifa was left with what? The only choice that I have is to negotiate. And he sends to Hulaku to open the line of negotiation. Right? What will happen? What will this lead to? We'll see that inshallah next time because it's time for salah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. جزاكم الله. I'm sorry for this. Go ahead. Yeah. السلام عليكم ورحمة
بس عندي كم سؤال.
نعم قوي.
هذا هولاكو
هولاكو
ما بعرف اذا انت قلت من قبل بس هو بقبضه لجنكيز خان ولا هذا سنين بعد؟
انا عندي طبعا هي سنين بعد. جنكيز خان died 624.
اوكي.
احنا دلوقتي 656.
اوكي so هذا like just a
He's grandson of Genghis Khan. And I'll show the family tree.
شكلي
Right? So it's I think the son of Toloi. So like Genghis Khan he has 4 kids. Toloi ابنه هولاكو. Right? So he's يعني هو حفيد جنكيز خان.
وبعدين في كان سلايد المكتوب مملوكس ذا نايتس اوف نسيت بس كان مكتوب نور الدين بس
Which one? نعم. ما هي دي المشكلة بتاعت عشان كده ما بحبش اقول اسامي كتير. انهي سلايد؟
لانه كثير قراب على بعض فيعني
انهي سلايد قبل دول؟
قبل كثير. اول ما حكيت عن المملوكس
دي نو
اكثر بكثير.